Kitco News special coverage of the Future Blockchain Summit is brought to you by Coin Payments, crypto payments made easy.
I'm Michelle Makori. This is Kitco News coming to you from the Future Blockchain Summit in Dubai, where it is blistering hot, and that may be an indication that crypto winter may be starting to thaw soon. And that is at least the view of my next guest, Vays. Tone, so good to have you with us.
Hey Michelle, thank you for having me on the show.
It's great to have you with us. And of course, Tone, you are a crypto analyst, a derivatives trader, a very popular YouTuber, and you're also a producer of several events, including the upcoming financial summit, which you will tell us about a little bit later. But before we get into that, you have a feeling, a strong indication that we're going to see a reversal in the price of Bitcoin, because we haven't been able to break past 23,000 over the past couple of months, but you're thinking a reversal is upon us.
Yes, I really do think this crypto winter is coming to an end. There are two things that lead to a reversal in price of an asset that you know is fundamentally sound. One of them is a price correction, another one is a time correction. Bitcoin can't last in these bear markets for too long because of the way it was engineered to have a halving event. There's only so much Bitcoin going around. There's lots of fundamental metrics of people taking their Bitcoin off exchanges. The number of wallets with a single Bitcoin is now over 900,000, and it should break 1 million very soon. People that can acquire just a single Bitcoin, they're not going to be in a rush to sell it. They're buying it for the long term. The amount of Bitcoin being locked up in the Lightning Network that's used more as a currency for payments, that number is growing. There's over 5,000 Bitcoin there already, and that should probably double very soon. This is the Bitcoin that is leaving out from speculative trading. And when there's not enough Bitcoin to go around, the only place it can go is up, because there is a need for it all the time. And then, of course, as a technical analyst, there are technical metrics on the price that also
Well, I get the long-term case for Bitcoin, and that seems to be what you're making. But why do you anticipate a reversal happening this quarter, especially when we have macro factors like increasing interest rates, less liquidity in the markets, a very aggressive US Fed, which is being mimicked by other central banks around the world? With this liquidity drain, what makes you convinced that we're going to see a reversal in this next quarter?
Well, also as a technical analyst, right now, I think the best position for the shorter-term speculator and trader is to be in cash. While I am expecting a reversal in price of both Bitcoin and the stock market itself for seasonality reasons, the election coming up, we've already fallen 30-40%. I know there is a bit of a recession, global recession going on, but these interest rates that are rising are creating havoc in the bond markets. And those that have had their bond portfolios for a long time, and there's 10 times more money in bonds than in stocks, they're going to be exiting because those bonds are losing value as interest rates rise. And money has to go somewhere. I don't believe in the everything bubble that some people like to claim. I think there's going to be a lot of speculation in tech and a lot of these companies. There is a strong possibility that we could have a bit of a flash crash still in Bitcoin, just to get everybody scared, which is why at the moment I'm holding a cash position, and I will either go in strong if Bitcoin drops to the $14,000 area, or I'll just wait for it to establish above 22,000, and then I'll be very confident that that 17,000, 18,000 low is here to stay.
Are you giving me some very mixed signals here, Tone? You recently said that the price direction of Bitcoin is going to reverse sometime this month. You've said that on a recent podcast. Now you're saying it will, it won't. What is your
believe that it will.
For the near term, the next 3 months? What do you see?
The next 3 months, I'm expecting Bitcoin to start another bull trend.
Okay.
But before it starts that bull trend, either it can continue to consolidate here until the end of the year for another 2 to 3 months. It'll be stuck in this $19,000 to $22,000 range, getting everyone frustrated that Bitcoin is not going anywhere. Or it can drop real quickly this month down to, say, 14,000, even 12,000. and then reverse very quickly from there, just like we did in 2020. So those are the two possibilities I'm looking at. So if you are a bull, you like myself at the moment, I have a limit order set up to buy Bitcoin if it crashes, and if it doesn't, I'm just gonna wait it out the rest of the year or go in the moment it starts trending above 22,000 and then catch the move from 22 all the way to 100.
22 all the way to 100. Before we get to the good stuff, you said you see a support level at 14,000. Is that what you would be calling as the next support level here?
Yes, it is. But because Bitcoin is so illiquid, it is very difficult it's a lot more difficult to identify a true support level, because once Bitcoin starts a catastrophic fall down, these exchanges, they usually don't function. We've seen this many times. It's still a very young space, a very young industry. There's no circuit breakers like we have in the traditional markets. So whenever Bitcoin crashes, it tends to become very unpredictable, and these levels don't matter as much. But I am looking at that $14,000 level, and I would be surprised if it goes below it. And I would also be surprised if it doesn't immediately fly back above 20 from that level.
And what would trigger that? What would trigger this overall price reversal that you're forecasting in the not too distant future in the next quarter or so?
Oh, so many people are bullish on Bitcoin, and they're really waiting. They know they missed their chance in the last, catching the last low in 2020. They missed their chance catching the low in 2018. This is one more chance. And those that understand Bitcoin fundamentally know that Bitcoin is not going to zero. I mean, anything can happen with this immature market, but people know if they ever get an opportunity to buy Bitcoin again under 10,000, they will jump on it immediately. And Bitcoin liquidity would just be completely taken out of the speculative markets, and it would go up even quicker than it did in 2020.
So basically sentiment driven. FOMO and sentiment.
Yes.
Is what you think is going to catapult Bitcoin, even if it drops below 14 or even below 10, the FOMO of people not wanting to miss out on it.
Absolutely.
Why are you so convinced that Bitcoin is never going to zero?
Because Bitcoin has properties that no other asset before Bitcoin or after Bitcoin has. The two key properties that it has is unconfiscatability and censorship resistance. We're witnessing government, central banks, regular banks freeze bank accounts. PayPal just announced that they would take $2,500 out of your account if they don't like what you write on social media. Then they try to backtrack it when so many people close the accounts. I've been talking about these things for almost 9 years now on YouTube, because I realized in 2013 that Bitcoin is the first unconfiscatable asset in human history. This year alone, we witnessed the West and the United States confiscate and freeze like Russian government money, confiscate wealth because people had a Russian passport that happened to have a yacht in Europe. Prior to that, in 2011, also might have been 2012 or 2011, Trudeau in Canada is freezing people's bank accounts for a $20 donation for a political contribution that they don't like. This all started with Cyprus back in 2013 when they confiscated people's money from their bank accounts to bail in the banks. You can't do that with Bitcoin. It's the first unconfiscatable asset people have ever owned. And this property is becoming more and more important. Also because I see Bitcoin as the only decentralized cryptocurrency. It is censorship resistant, and you can send it to anyone, anywhere. We saw an example of this with the Greek banking crisis in 2015, when people were only allowed to withdraw 60 euros a day from their banks. And people are recognizing these properties as they become more and more important.
I certainly get that argument, and we are seeing increased censorship, an increase of cancel culture, an increase of government overreach. If COVID taught us anything, it's that you can't really put limits on what you can expect your governments to impose on you in terms of restrictions. But back to the idea of Bitcoin never going to zero, there are those Bitcoin detractors who say that essentially it's a pyramid scheme, that it's a greater fall. And you're saying that it's mostly based on sentiment and fear of missing out. So it's sort of in a way feeding into that argument that you need other people to feel that Bitcoin will go up in order to continue to see Bitcoin going up and that it's mostly sentiment driven. But you're saying that that sentiment is linked directly to this idea of increased censorship.
Correct. So in order for Bitcoin to escape the concept of a Ponzi, it needs to bring some kind of innovation to the world. Any asset requires people to buy it. Any speculative asset you can think of requires someone else to buy it from you at a higher price. But what is leading to that speculation? Like we've seen this with the tulip bubble, we've seen this, and most cryptocurrencies are Ponzi schemes to me. But because Bitcoin actually brought innovation to the equation, and people are still confused what that innovation is, the properties of unconfiscatability and censorship resistance, those are the properties. The technological innovation that got us those properties was the mining structure. Satoshi solved the double spending problem in computer science by creating mining. And most projects, big projects, even like Ethereum and Vitalik Buterin, just don't understand what the innovation was to give us this decentralized blockchain. It was mining. Proof of stake has existed for 1,000 years.
Well, now that you mention the issue of proof of stake versus proof of work, which is the topic of our panel the other day, we have been seeing the proof of stake protocol gaining popularity, mostly because it addresses some of the energy concerns that proof of work does not. We know that Bitcoin at large has been vilified by the ESG movement for being environmentally unfriendly for the energy that it consumes. There are a ton of statistics out there, including Bitcoin consumes more electricity than the entire country of Norway, depending on who's giving you those stats. Sometimes it's the entire country of Argentina, but there's no doubt about it that proof of work does indeed consume a lot of energy and a lot of power. And ever since the successful Ethereum merge going onto the proof of stake protocol, which I believe uses 99% less energy than proof of work, we are seeing a push towards that. But why do you think that is the wrong way to go in terms of the whole ethos of a cryptocurrency?
Sure. Well, the word wrong is probably is interesting. What Ethereum's doing isn't wrong. What they're doing is going back to the traditional finance and banking system, which has worked fairly well for the last 100 years with ups and downs. People will debate whether the Fed should or shouldn't exist. But going to a proof of stake system removes the actual innovation of being a decentralized cryptocurrency. To me, Ethereum always had large elements of centralization. You have one entity with a leader that decides on what code gets into the system. It is almost impossible for the average person to run a node and validate their own transactions and decide what the rules of the system will be. And their biggest decentralized element of the Ethereum blockchain was mining. And because the Ethereum network is so centralized, they were able to get rid of their one decentralized aspect that had innovation. There's nothing necessarily wrong with that, but I always thought Ethereum was competing with AWS and just being a web services platform and not revolutionizing money or decentralization. And now they're moving closer to that. So Ethereum's biggest competitor is actually Amazon. It is not Bitcoin. And I always stayed away from Ethereum because it also has technological problems. It's very hard to scale. And they knew they couldn't scale with proof of work. So they went to a more centralized solution that I think is more insecure. But we will see where it goes. It's still possible for the Ethereum token to go up in value a lot because now the traditional markets and the traditional players would love it even more. But just because that token is going up doesn't mean it's competing with Bitcoin. They're in completely different elements. And I believe that one day the Ethereum token will be registered as a security. To me, it always was a security. I happen to agree with Gary Gensler on his views. And it should be. It should be a registered security traded on the regulated stock markets. And it should be more, well, to me, it's already a company, but it should be more official of a company with Vitalik as CEO.
A lot to break down there. And yes, Gary Gensler, head of the SEC, has recently said that Ethereum does have properties of a security. the yield being one of them, the fact that you can get yield based on the efforts of other people, that you can derive income from that. That has been both a positive and a negative for Ethereum, depending on how it goes with regulation. And then, of course, as you mentioned, we have this issue of more institutional investment coming into Ethereum because of the ESG angle, which could in fact drive up the price. But ultimately, it's not a competitor to Bitcoin, in your view. You touched on the idea that Bitcoin, of course, is a currency, having recently said it's a new decentralized asset class that can be used as a currency that government fears. The government fears angle, we'll get into in a minute. But this idea of Bitcoin being a currency, it hasn't really taken off. You've mentioned scalability with regards to Ethereum. People are saying that we're not really seeing scalability in terms of Bitcoin being used as a currency. We've had about 12 years of transactions. There are about 30,000 merchants that accept Bitcoin worldwide, but as a currency, it hasn't gained the traction it's expected to, even with El Salvador, for example, adopting it as legal tender. Why do you think that is? Why do you think Bitcoin has not really taken off as a real means of exchange?
I think it's just young and it's still pretty volatile. And in the last year and a half, we had a bear market. Once we kick off another bull market, I think you will see a lot of people use it as a currency more. People tend to spend their Bitcoin after it has gone up in value. Right now, I have businesses as well. I organize the events, and I also sell products and services. I teach people how to trade. And right now, people don't want to spend money. There is a global recession going on. So it's a bit of a chicken and the egg problem. And once Bitcoin price starts going up, it will be used a lot more as a currency. Also, what we do say, yeah.
But on that point of Bitcoin price going up, I mean, that is one of the issues, that if you see it as a store of value and you anticipate the price going up, why would you want to spend it? Why would I want to buy a cup of coffee using my Bitcoin if I know that holding it, I'm going to get more appreciation? So is the idea of Bitcoin as a currency and as an appreciating store of value contradictory to one another?
Well, because eventually you will give in and have to buy that cup of coffee. As people get wealthier by holding Bitcoin, they...
Then why would I use Bitcoin as the currency to purchase whatever I'm buying?
But if Bitcoin is making you wealthy, you may no longer have a fiat job that is paying you money. You may also start requesting that your employer pay you in Bitcoin instead of US dollars or other fiat currencies. There's also companies that will convert your fiat paycheck right into Bitcoin. So those people that are earning their money in Bitcoin, they have no choice but to spend Bitcoin in order to, in order to survive and not starve.
Well, no,
and
I get
the number
that.
of these people is just slowly rising, and people wanting to accept Bitcoin. It's this cycle that draws itself.
But even if I'm earning Bitcoin exclusively, and I'm on the opinion that Bitcoin is only going to appreciate,
yes,
I can always transfer my Bitcoin into fiat and use that for my daily transactions. The idea that Bitcoin appreciates constantly and is a store of value and something that I should hold on to doesn't really translate into me using it again for daily transactions, even though I may be opting to be paid in Bitcoin. I can still, in your situation, there's a system where there's absolutely no fiat or no other transactions to be had.
Well, eventually we may head there. If you're in Europe, if you're in the UK and you're watching your currency drop very, very quickly, Bitcoin should be very interesting. If you're in Turkey, Bitcoin should be very interesting. Because of the sanctions on Russia, they just announced they are very open to Bitcoin transactions.
Agreed as a store of value and agreed in a system where there's sanctions. But for an everyday transaction point of view, the original white paper concept of a peer-to-peer payment system, how is it possible that we're going to transact in a currency, again, that we're saying is able to go from where it is now to 100,000? Why again would I be spending it?
Because you will. No one keeps their wealth forever. You're looking at
if you remember
the old cartoon of Donald Duck, where he has this vault of gold that he swims in. as people become wealthier, they spend the money.
I believe that's Scrooge McDuck.
Scrooge McDuck.
I believe that's Donald Duck's uncle.
Yes.
But that is a point to debate in another time, but I'm pretty sure it's Scrooge McDuck. So
and also the Lightning Network that allows you to easily spend Bitcoin on small transactions. The Lightning Network is only maturing now. So when we do say Bitcoin is 12 years old, but no one was really using it peer-to-peer, the technology wasn't there yet. It takes a little while to build it, and it takes a little bit of time. But now that the Lightning Network is fully operational and is getting out of its beta stage, I am very confident that over the next 2 to 3 years, we will see massive scaling in people actually using Bitcoin peer-to-peer.
So is there anything that could convince you that would develop, that could happen, that Bitcoin is not actually a long-term viable cryptocurrency? Is there any existential threats to Bitcoin that you perceive that could make you change your argument?
So there could be a technological problem with Bitcoin that was always in the back of our minds, maybe some kind of a bug that's catastrophic. But a similar thing could also be in the internet itself. There's some kind of a critical bug and our entire TCP/IP internet layer goes down, and then we won't be able to do anything with our cell phones for a little while. In Bitcoin, I'm assuming even if that happens, it should come back. But because it has such a speculative price component, confidence could be lost. So there is that side of it. As far as another cryptocurrency, or a CBDC, knocking Bitcoin off of its ranks or off of its path to be the global currency of the world, I give the odds of that very small, maybe 2%.
All right, that's not that small. Let's talk about the price again, because our viewers are always very interested in price forecasts over here. So you mentioned earlier in this interview that you still have a forecast of $100,000 for Bitcoin. What is your rough timeline for that?
Sometime next year. I do expect us to have a nice bull market next year because of the halving that's coming up.
But that's in May 2024, I
It's
believe.
in May 2024.
In about 560
we
days.
just hit a brand new all-time high in hash rate. And again, since I'm expecting the bull market next year, there'll be even more hash rate. The halving will probably be a little bit sooner. People always underestimate it. Probably closer to March or April of 2024. But the hype that the halving's coming will come a lot earlier. So I am expecting us to have the full bull run, which may even complete before the halving because it could exhaust itself. So I would be surprised if we're not approaching that 100,000 sometime next year.
And what do you think triggers the larger bull run? Is that on the macro front? You're anticipating some kind of Fed pivot or some kind of...
It's everything. It's, I think big catalysts are problems with the European common currency. The euro could break apart. We're also looking at...
Sorry, so when you're saying bull run, you mean exclusively for Bitcoin or a bull run at large?
We can have a bull run in all cryptocurrencies and crypto projects as speculation. My focus is Bitcoin.
But not necessarily equities or other markets.
I think equities will also rise in price. I think I'm not a big fan of real estate at the moment. So my markets are the stock market,
right,
especially companies that are mobile. Everyone thinks of Apple as like a US company, but they manufacture in China and they're domiciled in like Dublin. It is also a pretty global company, and they don't necessarily use the US regulation. But if anything is to happen with the United States, let's say the US in the next decade breaks up into multiple countries because of the giant political divide, you can see these tech companies just going global. Like, we don't need the US.
They're already multinationals,
right,
as to your point. But just to clarify, when you're forecasting a bull run in 2023, you're saying a bull run at large, not necessarily just in the cryptocurrency sector.
Yes,
without getting into any particular equity picks or anything like that.
Yes, I believe there is going to be a big collapse in the bond market. There may even be a collapse in the real estate market. But I do think that there will be a lot of speculative money flowing into the equities market and into the crypto markets.
And what do you think would trigger that kind of reversal?
just the international capital flows out of regions. Europe, Eastern Europe, this military conflict with Russia, Ukraine is scaring a lot of people in Europe. They're gonna move their money. And I think they're gonna move that money into the United States because it is still the safest place to keep your money. And I think the speculative international flow of capital is gonna drive the speculative assets up. And also because everyone is bearish. Everyone is expecting a stock market crash. So many people are expecting more of a crypto winter. And whenever too many people are on one side of the market, it reverses. And right now I see very pessimistic sentiment, even though this conference is insane and gigantic. But most of the people I speak to are getting so demoralized that it's never gonna end and it's only gonna get worse. And that's what's making me bullish.
So you are a contrarian and you're going the opposite of
Yes.
what you're hearing as the trend being expressed. Well, you brought it to this conference. So what has been your major takeaway from the Future Blockchain Summit?
I mean, the biggest takeaway is this region, the UAE and Dubai and what they're doing. They're really allowing people to be creative and create innovation. They're very open to tech regulation. They're very open to financial regulation. And this is the problem. We're now witnessing, again, Europe being very scared of Bitcoin, putting in all kinds of regulation. Meanwhile, here in Dubai, it's booming. Everyone is moving here. They feel freedom here in the financial sector. And this is why I am very bullish on the Middle East region. And I am very bullish on Western Europe. I am very bullish on Latin America with countries like El Salvador accepting Bitcoin. And the moment Bitcoin price goes up, everyone will stop laughing at El Salvador. They're gonna realize they did something right. They're buying Bitcoin in this bear market. And other, especially Latin American countries that have a lot of business with El Salvador, they're gonna now ask them, how do we do this? So I'm very bullish on that region. Latin America, Middle East, and probably towards the end of the decade, Africa.
All right. On a very positive sentiment there, one final thought. Tell us about the Financial Summit, which is the conference that you have planned for November in Bali.
Sure, I organize it's a bit of a financial mastermind where we spend 5 days at a pretty high-end resort. It's the people that I try to bring are traders, money managers, hedge funds, family offices, VCs, just wealthy individuals looking to identify markets and discuss where to make money. I try not to connect money to talent as no investment pitches. I try to connect just talent with talent, connecting traders to money managers so maybe they can share some strategies and ideas, work together. And it's designed to be secluded. We either do it in the desert or somewhere on a beach. So you do have to network with the other people at the event. It's only for 50 people and it's an incredible event.
Sounds like an exclusive, a very interesting event. Good luck with it. Thank you so much for joining us. Tone Vays, really appreciate it.
Thank you.
Kitco News special coverage of the Future Blockchain Summit is brought to you by Coin Payments. Crypto payments made easy.